Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into the future of, well, good jobs here in the U.S. looking out towards 2031.
Yeah, and we're using a pretty detailed report as our map, basically. It's from the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce.
That's the one. The future of good jobs. Projections through 2031. And, our goal for you listening is pretty simple. Cut through the numbers and see where the job market's going, how education fits in, and importantly, what is a good job these days? We want to make this clear without drowning you in statistics.
Absolutely, and that definition is key. The report lays it out pretty clearly. For younger workers, say 25 to 44, a good job means earning at least $43,000 a year. That's in 2022 dollars.
Okay, $43,000 minimum.
Right, and the median for that group in good jobs is actually $74,000. Then for older workers, 45 to 64, the minimum threshold is higher, $55,000 a year, with their median earnings around $91,000.
Got it. So higher thresholds for the older group.
Yeah. And if you look across everyone aged 25 to 64 in these good jobs, the overall median pay is about $82,000.
Okay, so definitely more than just scraping by. But it's not only about the salary, right? The report mentions other things.
Exactly. A good job often comes with benefits. Health insurance, retirement plans, maybe some flexibility in your schedule, wellness programs, things like that.
Things that really add up to overall well-being.
For sure. And unsurprisingly, these kinds of packages are much more common in those better-paying jobs.
And the report kind of groups people by education to analyze this.
Right. They use three main pathways. There's the high school pathway, that's a diploma or less. Then middle skills, which is like an associate's degree or maybe it's some college, but no bachelor's.
Okay.
And the third is the bachelor's degree pathway, which includes bachelor's degrees and graduate degrees.
Right. So high school, middle skills, bachelor's, and up. That framework seems crucial.
It really is. It helps structure all the projections. So stepping back, what's the big picture forecast?
What's the headline number?
Well, the number of good jobs is actually projected to grow pretty substantially, by 21% between 2021 and 2031.
Wow, 21%. How many jobs is that?
That brings the total to an estimated 87.8 million good jobs by 2031.
87.8 million. That's a lot of jobs.
It is. And what's also interesting is that good jobs are set to become a bigger slice of the overall pie. They made up 59% of all jobs in 2021, and that's projected to rise to 62% by 2031.
Okay, so not just more good jobs, but a higher proportion of good jobs too. That sounds positive.
Generally, yes. It suggests a trend towards maybe higher quality work overall.
But how does that growth break down across those education pathways we talked about? Because I imagine it's not even.
Not at all. This is where it gets really telling. The bachelor's degree pathway, that's where the lion's share of the growth is expected. We're talking over 15 million net new good jobs for that group.
15 million, just for the bachelor's and up group.
Yep, it's huge. And because of that surge, their share of all good jobs is expected to jump from 59% back in 2021 up to 66% by 2031.
So 2/3 of all good jobs will likely require a bachelor's degree or more.
That's the projection. And get this, within that bachelor's pathway, the report estimates that about 79% of all jobs, good or not, will actually meet their definition of a good job.
Almost 80%. That really highlights the economic value of that degree continues to grow.
It certainly seems that way based on these projections. Now compare that to the middle skills pathway. The growth there is much, much smaller.
Okay, what are we looking at for associate's degrees or some college?
Pretty modest growth in good jobs, actually, around 0.2 million net new positions. So, not shrinking, but not booming either.
Right.
By 2031, they're expected to account for about 19% of all good jobs. And within that pathway, just over half, 52% of the jobs are projected to be good.
So still significant, 19% of the total, and about half the jobs within it are good, but definitely not the same scale of growth as the bachelor's path.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the high school pathway. I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Yeah, it's a different story there. The report actually projects a decline in the number of good jobs for folks with a high school diploma or less.
The decline. How much?
Nearly 600,000 fewer good jobs. So almost 0.6 million lost.
Wow. Okay.
By 2031, this group is expected to hold only about 15% of all good jobs. And within that pathway itself, only around 36% of the jobs are projected to meet the good job criteria.
Only about a third. That paints a very clear picture. It really seems like education beyond high school is becoming increasingly crucial for accessing these better opportunities.
It really does. The trend is pretty stark when you look at it that way. Now, the report also dives into why these shifts are happening. What are the big forces shaping this future job market?
Right, what's driving all this?
Yeah.
Demographics must be part of it.
Absolutely. Demographics are huge. You've got the aging population, the baby boomers retiring. That naturally slows down the growth of the workforce overall.
The generations coming in behind them are smaller, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Smaller cohorts entering the labor force. And you can see how that might squeeze certain sectors, especially those serving older adults. Think healthcare, home care aides.
Yeah, increased demand, potentially shrinking workforce. That's a tough spot.
It is. And, thinking bigger picture, if the labor supply is tight like that, it might actually make employers, well, a bit more open.
Open how?
More open to considering people from that middle skills pathway or focusing more on specific skills rather than just demanding a 4-year degree for everything. Skills-based hiring might get a boost out of necessity.
Interesting. So a tighter labor market could actually create some opportunities for those without a bachelor's, even if the overall trend favors degrees.
Potentially, yes. They might have to look harder and broader to fill roles.
Okay, so demographics is one piece. What about technology, specifically AI? That's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
It really is. And the report tackles it. It acknowledges, there could be some short-term bumps. Automation definitely disrupts things.
Yeah, we hear about jobs being automated away all the time.
Yeah. Right. But the longer view often suggests that while some tasks or even jobs change or disappear, new ones also get created. Technology evolves, jobs evolve with it.
Okay, but is AI different? Especially this new generative AI.
That's the key question, and the report suggests it might be different. Unlike older automation that often hit manufacturing or routine tasks, generative AI seems poised to affect more white-collar work, jobs often held by college grads.
Like what kind of tasks?
Things like drafting reports, maybe initial marketing copy, basic legal research assistance, tasks that require cognitive skills, but maybe ones AI can start doing, or at least assisting with significantly.
So it's less about whole jobs vanishing overnight and more about the tasks within jobs changing.
That seems to be the consensus, or at least the report's perspective. It's about task transformation more than just job elimination across the board. They actually put a number on it.
Oh, yeah.
They estimate about 28% of all current job tasks could potentially be automated by 2031.
28%, that's quite a chunk.
It is. And the risk is higher, they say, for tasks that are more physical or involve sort of lower-level cognitive functions.
Which, again, points towards needing higher-level skills, adaptability.
Exactly. Being able to learn and adapt is going to be crucial.
Okay, demographics, technology.
Yeah.
What about just plain old economics?
Yeah, economic factors are definitely in the mix. The report notes that as of early 2024, when it was written, inflation had cooled off a bit, and we hadn't tipped into a major recession like some feared.
Right. Things felt a bit more stable for a moment there.
And importantly, there's been significant federal investment flowing into infrastructure, the IIJA, the CHIP PS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act.
All that money for roads, bridges, semiconductors, green energy.
Exactly. And that's expected to give a real boost to blue-collar jobs, especially in construction and also middle skills work, particularly in clean energy sectors.
So that's potentially good news for the middle skills pathway in certain areas.
Yes, particularly in those targeted sectors. However,
There is a however.
Always. The report also flags global economic uncertainty. Geopolitical conflicts, what's happening with China's economy. These big external factors can always throw a wrench in domestic projections.
Sure, we're not operating in a vacuum. Okay, one more factor they mention. Skills-based hiring. We've touched on it, but what's the report say? Is it really taking off?
Well, the idea is definitely gaining steam. You see more states dropping degree requirements for some government jobs, for instance.
Yeah, I've seen headlines about that.
And some job postings are shifting language, focusing more on specific skills needed rather than just listing bachelor's degree required.
But is it translating into actual hiring changes?
That's the million-dollar question. And the report suggests, not quite yet, or at least not universally, the shift in philosophy hasn't fully changed widespread hiring practices across the board. Non-degree credentials like certificates, certifications, they're becoming more popular and recognized, which fits that skills-based idea.
But despite all the talk about skills, the bachelor's degree still reigns supreme for getting those good jobs.
Overwhelmingly so, according to this report. It remains the clearest, most dominant pathway to good job opportunities, and its dominance is actually projected to increase.
So, Skills are important, credentials help, but that 4-year degree still seems to be the main gateway.
That's the takeaway from this data, yeah.
Okay, we've got the big trends, the driving forces. Let's get specific. Where are the actual promising jobs within these pathways? The report calls out specific occupational groups, right?
It does. It identifies promising occupations for each pathway, and they have specific criteria for what makes an occupation promising.
What are the criteria?
2 things. First, more than half the jobs in that occupation are projected to be good jobs for people on that specific educational path by 2031.
Okay, so a high likelihood of it being a good job.
Right. And second, that occupation has to employ a higher share of workers from that specific educational pathway than the economy overall in 2031.
Ah, so it's not just good, but it's also a field where people with that education level tend to congregate, more so than average.
Exactly. It's about likelihood and concentration.
Makes sense. So let's start at the top again, the bachelor's degree pathway. Which occupations look promising there?
There are 10 groups highlighted. The biggest one, in terms of just the sheer number of good job opportunities, is management.
Management, that's pretty broad.
It is. General managers, operations managers, financial managers, IT managers, lots of roles fall under this. And the likelihood of it being a good job is really high, 91%.
91%. And the pay potential?
Significant. They mention chief executives with median earnings around $179,000 as an example at the top end. It really reflects that need for leadership and strategy.
Okay, so management is number one. What else is on the list for bachelor's grads?
Business and financial operations is another big one. Think financial analysts, accountants, management analysts. Also a very strong likelihood of being a good job, 87%.
And earnings there?
Can be quite good. Financial risk specialists, for instance, can hit median earnings up to $100,000. Then there's healthcare professional and technical.
We knew healthcare would be here.
86% likelihood of a good job. Includes doctors, registered nurses, physical therapists, huge growth driver because of the aging population we talked about.
Right, what else?
Education, training, and library occupations. Teachers, librarians. Good likelihood, 74%, and just a large number of good jobs overall in this sector.
Okay, still lots of opportunity there.
Then the tech field. Computer and mathematical science, software developers, data scientists, very high likelihood, 93%, and high earnings potential computer and information research scientists, median at $131,000.
Still a very strong bet, tech.
Seems so. Also architecture and engineering, civil engineers, aerospace engineers, high likelihood, again, 93%, driven by infrastructure needs and tech innovation.
Sure.
Life, physical and social sciences. Think medical scientists, psychologists, 88% likelihood. Community and social services counselors, social workers, decent likelihood at 67%.
So helping professions are still promising.
Yes. And interestingly, arts, design, entertainment, sports, and media also makes the list. Graphic designers, writers, 74% likelihood. Shows creative fields aren't excluded.
Good to know. Any others?
And finally, legal occupations. Lawyers, basically. 85% likelihood of being a good job.
Wow. That's a pretty comprehensive list for the bachelor's pathway. 10 solid groups.
A lot of diverse opportunities there, definitely.
Okay, let's shift down to the middle skills pathway. Associate's degrees, some college. What looks promising there? Fewer groups, I assume.
5 promising groups identified here. Leading the pack is construction and extraction.
Ah, the infrastructure boost paying off.
Seems like it. A good likelihood, 69% for a good job. Electricians, plumbers, those kinds of skilled trades. And the pay can be solid elevator installers mentioned with median earnings up to $98,000.
Nearly 6 figures for a skilled trade. That's definitely a good job.
Absolutely. So skilled trades look strong. What else?
Healthcare professional and technical shows up again here.
Yeah.
But likely different. Sure. Public safety.
Then installation, maintenance, and repair. Think aircraft mechanics, security system installers. A bit lower likelihood, 51%, but still meets the criteria.
Okay, just over the 50% mark.
And finally, production occupations. This could benefit from manufacturing investments. Tool and die makers, power plant operators, moderate likelihood at 56%. Some roles here, like nuclear power reactor operators, have very high median earnings, over $100.
So healthcare, public safety, school trades, some technical repair, and production. A different mix, but definitely opportunities there for the middle skill folks.
Yes, significant opportunities in those specific areas.
All right, now for the high school pathway diploma or less. You mentioned earlier the overall trend wasn't great here. Does anything qualify as promising?
Just one group, unfortunately.
Only one. Which one?
It's installation, maintenance, and repair again. Same group as middle skills, but focusing on roles typically accessible with just high school, like automotive body repairers.
And the likelihood.
The same, 51%. Moderate likelihood. But, and this is important, the report stresses there are very few net new good jobs expected overall for this entire educational pathway.
So even the one promising area isn't projected to add many new good jobs for this group.
Exactly. It really highlights that upskilling trend the report talks about.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It feels like a running theme, needing more skills, more education, even within the same job type sometimes.
Precisely. The demand is increasing for higher skills within occupations and also shifting jobs towards occupations requiring more skills.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Take management or construction or even tech jobs. The report shows growth in good jobs for people with bachelor's or middle skills in those fields, but at the same time, a decline in good jobs for those with only a high school diploma within those exact same fields.
So the nature of the work, even in traditional fields, is demanding more education or training.
It seems so. The skill requirements are rising.
And you mentioned earlier, even within the bachelor's pathway, it's not just about getting the four-year degree anymore. Graduate degrees are becoming more important.
That's another key finding. They project that almost half, 44% of the good jobs on that bachelor's pathway will actually require a graduate degree by 2031.
44%. Where is that particularly concentrated?
Mostly in those managerial and professional office roles, and also heavily in healthcare professional and technical fields. Think advanced practice nurses, physicians, specialized managers.
So for many top-tier opportunities, the bachelor's is becoming more like a stepping stone to further specialization.
It looks that way, yeah. A foundation for grad school in many high-growth, high-paying areas.
Okay, one last distinction the report makes. The difference between jobs that have large numbers versus jobs that have a high share of good jobs. Why is that important?
It's crucial for perspective. You have some huge occupational groups, think office and admin support or healthcare support roles like aides. Millions of people work in these fields.
Right, lots and lots of jobs.
But a lower percentage of those jobs might actually meet the good job definition based on pay and benefits.
Okay, so quantity doesn't always equal quality in this context.
Exactly. And conversely, you look at fields like STEM, science, tech, engineering, math, they often have a very high percentage of good jobs.
Like those 93% likelihoods we saw.
Right. But those fields might represent a smaller total number of jobs in the overall economy compared to, say, admin support.
So when you're thinking about careers, you need to consider both. How many jobs are there, and what percentage of them are actually good jobs?
Precisely. You need both pieces of the puzzle to make informed choices. High growth and high quality don't always perfectly overlap with the largest employment sectors.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, if you had to boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the main message is pretty clear. The future of good jobs, looking out to 2031, really seems to favor people who get education and training beyond high school.
That's the headline.
Yeah. Now, there will still be good jobs across all the pathways, let's be clear. But the bachelor's degree path, that's where the most growth and the most opportunities are projected.
Okay.
The middle skills path offers real potential too, but it's more concentrated in specific areas, those skilled trades, certain healthcare roles, protective services.
So targeted opportunities there.
Right. And for the high school pathway, the outlook for good jobs is, frankly, tougher. The number is expected to shrink, with installation, maintenance, and repair being the main, albeit small, bright spot.
A really clear, if somewhat sobering picture, depending on where you are educationally. It definitely provides a lot to think about.
It really does.
So here's maybe a final thought for you listening right now. When you hear these projections, what steps could you potentially take starting now, no matter where you are in your education or career? How can you position yourself for success in this job market that's clearly evolving? Are there skills you need to pick up, maybe further training or education that makes sense, or specific industries highlighted here that seem worth a closer look? It really drives home that, informed by this kind of insight, the future of your career path is, in many ways, up to you. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.